Okay, I want to start with the flat Earth because that's contagious, but it's an important point behind it. Right. I know there's a lot of flat earthers, or there might be a lot of flat earthers around here. So, let's look at some basic physics. Right. I've been sailing, doing a lot of sailing, okay, and we use the round Earth basis for navigation. Okay. However, one argument I've always used is, okay, why is it I can always see the top of the mountain before I can see the bottom of the mountain?
No, it depends what optical device you've got. Your eye is correct.
Correct.
But not with an optical.
So let's look at the reason for that. Okay. So whether it's a flat Earth.
No, you're not answering my question.
Hang on.
You can only with a naked eye, not with a lens. You can see the bottom of the lens.
Correct. Right. So basically, the reason I can see that first, okay, is basically here's my eye and here's my lens.
No, an optical lens. You've got a
The same. You can use it the same with the telescope.
There's plenty of on YouTube where the eye will only see the top, but when they put an optical lens on, you'll see the bottom.
But the reason, yeah, and the reason behind that is the laws of physics. Okay, the truth. So physically, okay, your eye can only see.
But not when your eye is attached to a lens.
No, the same principle applies.
But
The
it's
lens-
not
the-
that
the-
well.
No, it does. Okay, because this angle here, that angle there, is what allows you to see. So basically, the bottom, if it's a flat Earth or round Earth, the concept is this angle here is, I think, 0.2 radians. Now, because on the horizon, 0.2 radians is very low, as opposed to seeing the top of the mountain, I can distinguish 0.2 radians going up, but I cannot distinguish 0.2 radians going down. Therefore, I can't see the bottom because of the physical limitation of my eye. Okay? So there's a good argument now for people with flat Earth that explains that phenomenon away.
It doesn't know, Mark. When you put an optical on an end of a lens, you will see the bottom.
Correct. And the reason is because if I put in a bigger lens, which is in effect what it is, or a telescope, whatever I'm increasing, basically that there is increasing the 0.2 radians. Once it's over 0.2, then physically it can be seen.
Right, hold on.
Yeah?
That's in your lens to see further. How's it going to see further into your curvature?
No, this is what I'm saying.
So
Okay.
Are you flat or globe? So,
I'm
you discussing flat
I'm
or
neither
globe?
because it makes no difference if it's flat or round.
Well, it makes a big difference to me. It makes a massive difference.
Exactly.
For all practical purposes, everything's done as if the Earth's flat.
Correct.
Okay?
Correct,
So
it is.
therefore, what difference does it make? And so, why should we be wasting energy asking about flat Earth, where it is of no significance to what we do? Let's concentrate our energies where we can do something about it. Okay? And that is really what I'm trying to bring across. We have power to create change, and rather than worrying about whether the Earth's flat or round, for all practical purposes, there's not one reason why we need to work on round Earth theory.
There is none. The fact, what is truth? What is fact? That's the issue.
It's irrelevant what is true or what is fact.
Because it's the biggest lie of all.
It may well be, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect our lives. Okay?
So, in terms of our lives, I agree with you. Okay, it might not impact our lives in per se. Yeah. But from an American point of view, it impacts their lives to the tune of over $27 million a day. Yeah, so it does impact their lives because ultimately all the money is being siphoned due to this lie and paste it elsewhere, yeah, as look here, look here, look there, look there. Now, the question
Okay,
I've got, one
you're
question
talking
I've got-
about NASA.
No, so yeah, in terms of
Okay,
NASA,
so
what they
basically,
say, yeah,
what I'm saying
they
is,
are the authority, aren't they?
it doesn't matter.
Well, that's what they claim
What I'm
the
saying is, the rule of law will sort out all of this nonsense. Okay?
But they won't allow the rule of law, that's the problem.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
We are trying to enforce the rule of law because somebody needs to police the police. Okay? Somebody needs to police the judges. Somebody needs to police the, anybody that's granted a privilege by society. And that somebody is you and me. Okay? So that's the idea of what this is all about. So what it is, it's a summary of the whole Peacekeeper course, plus a shitload more. Okay? So we'll start off looking at the basics, duties, rights and obligations, and why nothing can be done without your consent. i.e., nobody can impose their will on another. And we'll look at the right of self-defense. And somebody asked earlier about if somebody in the council denies planning permission. All right? If anybody denies you an inalienable or unalienable, depending on what the word you want to use, American or English, right, they have created an obligation upon themselves then to provide for you. Okay? So anything that you are denied, the person that's denying you that is now under obligation. Why? Because they've imposed on your trust. You have the inalienable right to explore your conscience. Anybody denies you that right, they've imposed on the trust, they trusty du son, that means they become accountable and liable to you. So it's not benefits society. If society does not allow you to explore this reality according to your conscience, which dictates right from wrong, then society has created an obligation to provide for you. Okay? So we've got to get out of people's heads, oh, you're on benefits. Okay? No, I have a right, and you've created the obligation to provide. Big, big difference, and it's the mind. Okay? And we'll look at everybody's right. Your body is yours to do with whatever you choose. Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. Okay? And then we'll go on to natural justice. A big marketing ploy of the courts is we're not courts of law, of morals, we're courts of law. Okay? Utter nonsense. Every court is a court of equity. And equity is about conscience. Equity is invoked when any action is what's called unconscionable. Any action which goes against the conscience. If it feels wrong, it is wrong, and therefore equity is invoked. Then law is about rationality. The right of survival is irrational in the view that the creator or whatever it is will take over control of your mind to ensure that your body survives, and hence the right of self-defense. Anything beyond that then is about rationality, logic and reason in this material realm. And so what you'll see is in the US Constitutional Declaration of Independence, they say self-evident truths. Okay? And what I'll show you is how in court, using the rules of the court, absolutely there are self-evident rules. So that is what gives you standing then to be able to argue this in court, and I've argued it in court, and the judge shut up, okay, because he was saying that my arguments were theoretical and philosophical. But within 30 seconds, that's it, end of argument. So that's what we're going to start looking at first, and then we're going to start looking at the court system itself. So that basically is the authority of the independent judiciary, and we'll look at the structure of governance and judiciary. We've all heard about the separation of powers. Is it true? Going back to, is the earth flat or round? Okay? And we'll be busting all of these myths as we go along. And then, whoops, Carrie, have you just done something? No. Okay, and then we'll start looking at a lot of the workings of the court, the structure of the court. And the whole idea is, in order to be able to police the courts, we need to understand what's going on in there. Why doesn't this disappear? So the rest of it then will basically be going through the basic rules of the court, because honestly, it's really simple. Okay? Basically, we have one obligation, and when you understand that obligation, carry down. Hang on. Carry it, come on.
It's balls on top of the...
Yeah, no, I'll put it on the lead. Come on, Carrie. Yeah. Carrie. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. No. Basically, when you understand that everything's about breach of peace, because we're all equal under the law and nobody's above the law, and breach of peace is simply about harm. Do whatever you like. Follow your conscience. Your conscience dictates right from wrong. And there's no relative right or relative wrong. There's a right and a wrong. Okay? This nonsense of relativity is where you try and justify with your head, oh, it's not so bad because Calvin's doing it, and so is Dwayne doing it, therefore it's all right that I do it. Okay? Two wrongs don't make a right. Simple as. And so that there is the foundation of absolutely everything. And once you know that, everything else actually is very rational, the way that it's set up. So essentially, the way the courts operate, and again, this is law, and we'll look at so that you understand the difference between law and legislation. Okay? And with that, nobody has the right to impose their will on you. Why? Because they are causing you harm. Therefore, they are breaching your peace, and the only way that they can prove that it's lawful is showing what's called joinder, and if they can't show joinder, then they can't show intent. Therefore, they're breaching your peace, causing you harm, and that's it, that interaction is unlawful.
So how do you define harm?
Harm is anything which is removing your ability to implement your right. So it's called a chose in law. So a chose can be a right to property or a right to an action. Okay? So harm is anything which denies you any right you have.
So if I'm Christian and I'm preaching the gospel and
Yeah.
a Muslim says I've caused them harm because I've gone
You-
contrary
you
to
have-
their belief, it's like you said, it's a belief.
No,
But
it's a belief, and
That's
therefore
what I'm saying.
they, as claimant, need to prove they're causing harm. Therefore, bring Allah into the court to say that Allah is the one. Okay, and until they can prove that in the court that Allah is the one, their claim has no substance because they can't support it under the rules of evidence.
Yes.
It's really simple.
Yeah.
So I don't
That
care
can be
about your
vice versa.
feelings
Yeah.
or your beliefs.
Yeah.
Okay? It's about evidence. So essentially, as we all equal under the law, what it means is each of us is an equal king or queen. Nobody can tell anybody what to do. So every interaction, therefore, is by consent, must be by consent. If it's not by consent, it's unlawful. So we all have, there are various ways that we create interactions, and that there includes from expectations. It could be verbal, expressed, or it can be expressed in writing. So we've got a contract, and that's why we're all here today. Was anything expressed in writing? Other than the location and time sort of thing, nothing. All that was, I said to Paul, right, Calvin's got a case on the 21st, I want to do the court auditor course so we can come in with some people with knowledge. And did they know, did you guys all know the contents of the course? To different degrees you did. Now, we've got an unwritten contract where there are expectations as to how I'll behave, how you'll behave with one another. If anybody breaches that, we'll have a dispute. So the idea is that because we're all equal under the law, we need to find a way of resolving dispute, because dispute will occur. Why? We all have different social conditioned belief systems, and we hence have different expectations on interactions. So that there is what I'm going to show you. There's a very honourable way which follows natural justice of right and wrong to resolve dispute, which is in existence in the public courts. But the problem is the people are not following the rules of the game. And that's what we trying to get across. We police them with a basic understanding of the important rules, which are relatively easy. Why? Because we all can feel what's right and wrong. So what are the rules of the game? Basically, when we can't resolve a dispute in private, then as a society, we need to have a mechanism to resolve disputes. And that means we need a neutral forum which is not biased. The first job is to establish the disputing parties' respective duties, rights and obligations to one another, i.e. what led you to your expectations. And then, because I can't, if I'm the resolver of dispute, I cannot impose my will on you. So we have two children arguing based upon their presentations is all that I can make a judgment on. Or if I know better, I introduce that so that the two kiddies who are fighting can rebut it. And only based upon what happened there can the decision be made as to who has a right and who's in the wrong. And that there is law, okay? And we'll go through that. So the problem that we've been having is people feel there are injustices, and with the injustice, what can we do about it? We can bitch and moan about it, all right? So the bitching and moaning, I used to be a massive, massive conspiracy theorist until I got my first application, which I lost, cost me 40 grand. I had a choice at that point. I could carry on being a conspiracy theorist, the Freemasons, the this, the blah, 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 blah. I chose to read the judgment. And guess what? The judgment told me what I did right and told me what I did wrong. So that's the beauty of the system. It's a problem with trial by jury. Okay? A written judgment must be rational. And without it being written, you cannot understand how that decision was reached. A trial by jury does not have to do that.
They could be asked to write their rationale and how a jury could write their decision down, same as a judge does.
Well, do they?
They
Are they
don't
obliged
know,
to?
but they could,
They could,
yes,
I agree, they could,
yeah.
but they don't. Okay? And so to challenge a jury decision is near impossible. Whereas to challenge a written decision is really simple because it tells you what you did right and wrong.
So how are you, I mean, I've been on jury duty here, so how do they determine and choose who goes on jury duty or not? Because I mean, for instance, you could have in America, for instance, it seems that there's a lot of bias towards
There's a
certain
huge amount
demographics.
because basically both parties must consent to who the jurors are. But I don't want to get into that. We'll talk briefly about it when we get onto jury because people need to understand the difference. Because you get the Article 61ers, okay, who are pushing for trial by jury, but they still don't understand that they can do that under Magna Carta 1297 and under the Bill of Rights, as opposed to Magna Carta 1215, which has no legal standing, and we'll look at and explain that. So the court auditor course is designed to teach people and give them a format then with a basic understanding of the rules of evidence and the procedures as to what should go on in trial, how to record the evidence of what actually goes on in trial, because without evidence we cannot hold them to account. Okay? So it's about gathering the evidence in a format that then we can take the next step forward and start to hold them to account. Without evidence, we can't do that. So many people feel that an injustice has been done, but there's no evidence to support it that will stand up under the rules of evidence. And the rules of evidence are really, really simple. So that's what the objective is and what I'm trying to get across.
Sorry.
Yeah?
So I don't know if people, we haven't kind of done formal introductions, but in terms of my case, where I've gone and we've gone for them in terms of
In the magistrate's
in
court.
magistrate's court. So I've
Okay, just to give you a bit of background, okay, Dwayne and I went through the notices to school with COVID and masking and that, and we've applied for a binding over order, which is in effect a cease and desist order, to the magistrate's court in February?
Yeah, well, it was in January.
Okay.
Sorry, it was March we first.
Was it March? Okay, in March we put in the application, and they're not doing their job. Okay, and so we're trying to work out how we can force the magistrates' court to do their job. Okay, but we'll look at that a bit more later when we get onto that. Sorry, yeah, introductions. Okay, sorry, should have started with me. I'm Mark. I was born in South Africa. I'm German. Lived most of my life in the Middle East. That's my story. Okay, how did I get involved with law and all of this that I'm doing? Most of my life was involved in contract law with contract claims, and I've never had to go to court to settle a claim because I've always managed to settle out of court with contracting. So I did that for 25, 30 years. So everything is contract. It's all about consent. Okay. And with that, in Kuwait we don't have a public pension, so we bought a flat with the idea that the rental income gives us a pension. We bought one first in Liverpool, that went fine, but one flat gives you about 250 quid a month on average. So we needed more than that. We bought the next one up in Leeds, and the developer went bust, and so that was in 2018. I got into equity and trust, and then with that, I bought a 40 quid textbook on equity and trust law, a university textbook, and it summarized everything really good. But they beat me in court because I just didn't have experience of courts. But I knew I was right, so I persisted. I lost 2 applications against me, 40 grand and 40 grand. But for an 80 grand education, it was well worth it. Also, I'm in the position where I've already got another judgment which confirms I had 2 causes of action in the first one, but I'm waiting for another 4 admission. I've actually got an admission now of breach of contract as well from that, which was another cause of action that I had, and I'm waiting for 3 more confirmations in this other judgment, which has gone to appeal, because basically they cover one another's arses, and it's about gathering the evidence and forcing the court to do its job properly. Okay? So I've got 4 solicitors on notice of breaching their obligations to society, to the rule of law, and to the courts, and a King's Counsel. But that's only through the application of it, because 80 grand's a lot of money, and that there you've got the choice then. And it's about the injustice, because everything is simple. It really is simple. Then along came COVID. I was in Kuwait. I was due to fly back on the 14th of March. On the 12th of March, they shut the country down. And when I say shut the country down, okay, overnight they imprisoned their bachelor areas, because you get a lot of third world nationals coming to work there, and all the bachelors are restricted to live in a certain area. Overnight they put concrete barriers and razor wire fences around, like 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers in 2 areas in Kuwait. They're literally overnight imprisoned, at a guess, 200,000-300,000 people. Okay? So I looked at the data, because I've also got a background in psychoanalysis, and it was obvious that this was nonsense, this whole COVID thing. And then I put together a claim, started to put together a claim against the MPs for acting unlawfully with the whole coronavirus stuff that they were doing. I thought, out of the blue, I'll just email Michael Benicio, and then I got involved with Michael, and we together brought the first PCP against Matt Hancock, which is another story. But I had to learn lessons from him. Patience, okay, was the number one thing. It's about patience. Anyway, that all sort of fell apart. And then whilst I was still, working with Michael, I was working with David Leahy, and started getting involved with helping people. And that's where the concept of the Peacekeeper course came about. Then from that, I met up with Glyn, and Glyn and his stepmom, Jane, helped me get what was in my head into the format of the Peacekeeper course. Then there was a fallout with Glyn, because fundamental concepts were understood, expectations, again, okay, unwritten expectations. And then a week before I was finished with putting together the Peacekeeper course, Brian came along and said, do you want me to build a website for you? And it's just basically growing from there. The philosophy is to empower people, teach them to fish, not give them a fish. And that starts with first the Peacekeeper course, which is about myself and the power that I hold. Then the Court Auditors course is then about moving forward to hold other people to account. What I'm working on now is putting together a structure so that there's an information flow, to set up a voluntary association where we agree with one another how we will interact with one another and resolve disputes. And once that's in place, I'm going to be putting together basically a module for how to bring claims, okay, either private criminal prosecutions or civil claims. The foundations and structures are the same, so that you can learn to bring your own claims. Okay, so with that, it starts with you and ends with you holding other people to account. So that's the strategy behind what I'm doing. and where I'm trying to go with this. I'm very lucky, okay, for what's happened to me during my life. It's allowed me to gain very broad experience, and everybody's heard about jack of all trades, master of none, but you know what the golden line is that nobody's heard, or very few people have heard? Jack of all trades, master of none is better than master of one. I.e., what's happening is everybody's specialised and they have no darn idea about what's going on outside there. I.e., there's no common sense involved. So until, when was it in Chipping Norton, a month or 2 months ago, when somebody said this, all of a sudden it makes sense, right? So with this, I've been lucky. I learned about accounting when I was about 12 or 13. I've done psychoanalysis. I've been working in contracts. Okay, I've been in courts. Very unusual that people have such a broad background. Okay, but that has allowed me to prepare this stuff. How did I prepare this stuff? I couldn't have done it on my own, right? There's nothing unique in what I do. There's nothing new under the sun. All I've done is, I've watched thousands of hours of other people's videos without them having done their research to get that far. Okay? This would never have been possible. So, I wrote down every single thing. So an hour of somebody else's video could take me 8 to 10 hours to watch. I wrote down claim by claim, and we'll be talking about this format, okay? It's called point by point. It's a brilliant system, okay? And then basically I'd go through, okay? So if there's 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, okay? With that, I would say, yes, I can find evidence to support this. No evidence, no evidence, no evidence. Yes, evidence, no evidence, question mark, no evidence. So now it meant that I had 1, 2, 3, 4 things, and the rest is nonsense. It's not supported in evidence. So multiply this by all the different people, and I've been through everything, or not everything, but basically just about everything on the internet. And all I've done is, with the same palette, painted a different picture. So there's nothing unique in what I've done, nothing new. It's just a new picture with the same information presented in a different manner. And society has allowed me the opportunity to get into this position, and therefore I feel obliged to pass this on to others, because it was, without society I wouldn't be able to be here, right? And that there is the giving back to society, what it's allowed me to accumulate. So that's where I'm sort of coming from with all of it. So who have we got here? There's people from 3 different groups, really. There's a bunch sort of who peacekeeper background. There's from Paul, who runs the community, what do you call it?
Common law community.
Common law community here in this area. And then there's from London and Calvin a group. So it's about what do we all have in common. Guess what? We have the rule of law in common. That's it. 99.9% of the population in this world already live under the rule of law, in that they will not knowingly cause another harm. So guess what? We've got 99% of the population already with something common. So that's the idea of the peacekeepers. Just get this what's in common, and your little details of all these different groups, that's fine, but live by what's in common. Okay? That's what it's about.